survey the leaders and influence of our world today, the attitude of Ahab is alive and well. Gurus and success coaches surround the wealthy and powerful and even common folk, offering what they consider sage advice. Some even cloak their advice in spiritual speak and tell us how much God wants to bless us and prosper us. But many offer no direction on how to get right with Him. And that's where the problem comes in. Many people use scriptures to make it seem like they're spiritual. But yet, just because the Bible said even the devil himself has come as an angel of light. In other words, come with a Bible, a suit, quoting scriptures, but he's still not right with God. And we as a people, we cannot get carried away with somebody that looks right, acts right, or talks right. We must be among those that are right. And that there is a big difference in somebody that looks right and somebody that is right. And we as a people, we must be right in what we do. You're not going to be popular. Not a lot of people care for you. But you got to be right in order to stand before God. But as we noted in the scriptures, many people, when they were right, like I said, they stood by themselves. Any comments? Big Max.
To piggyback back onto, I guess, what we talked about earlier, between the two kingdoms, and kind of we talked about it a couple Sundays ago. At the crux of it, the problem with the kings that had split off from the other two tribes was that they were never supposed to be kings. Many times things happen in life that we don't like, and then we take things into our own hand, and that's really what happened where the kingdom split. And you can say, well, it's because of this, and because the young man did not listen to wise counsel, and that's true. But God never told them to do that. They did it on their own. And then you set up a kingdom, and then, okay, well, my kingdom is here, and now what they're commanded at times to go to Jerusalem. And they can't go, because they won't go. Right. They won't go, because that's in a different kingdom. And those separate kings, you have to imagine at times, they can never be right with God, because they're never going to do what is required, because it would take away from them. Right. It would take away from their kingdom, their power, what they have set up to join back onto to God's kingdom. No, I'm the king. And many times in life, that can be us, because God has asked us to do something. God has placed us in a position where we're supposed to be doing something, and we don't want to do it. It's not what we don't think it's right. Well, and sometimes God might ask you to serve under a leader that is not all the way doing what they're supposed to do, but He's still commanding you to be obedient. And many times that's hard when we end up, instead of doing like we're supposed to do, we end up like Jonah. Well, no, God, what? That's a horrible place, and you should be doing that. So instead of doing what we're supposed to do, what God asks us to do, we come up with our own alternate plan, and then we call it being holy. We call it being righteous. But in the end, I'm still not, and I can't get right until I start first, do what God has asked me to do, what is required of me. And really, at the crux of it, like you said, none of those kings were good kings, holy, had any type of relationship. They couldn't, because if they had that relationship with God, then there would be no king.
Well, in essence, listen, if you don't start out right, there's no way you can get right. If you don't start out right, there's no way you can get right. To get right, you got to go back and get the thing from the very beginning to make things right in the first place. And most people are not willing to do that. They're not willing to go back and first thing right in the first place, they want to continue on the way that they're going. And what I mean by that is, in the very beginning, God never wanted them to have a king. From the very beginning. Samuel told the people, listen, no, you don't need a king. God is your king. But no, we want to be like everybody else. And I hate that saying people, well, how come we like everybody else? How come we do like everybody else? Everybody else is doing this. How come we're not doing it? Because everybody else may not be right. And I know many parents have been subject to that kind of, well, you know, they doing this and they doing that, this family doing this. How come we not doing it? Because not everybody is doing right. But again, from the very beginning, God never wanted them to have a king because he knew what would happen if they gave him a king. And how do you make that right once you've already gone down this line? Like I said, each kingdom had about 18, 19 kings. They've gone this way for so long, but yet they was always wrong. Always wrong. And so to get it right, they would have to go back and serve God and let him be their king. And of course, they weren't going to do that because they've gone so long being wrong. You know, it's really something when a person wrong for so long. They're wrong for so long, and they want to make what they're doing right, but you can't make wrong right. Does that make sense? You can't make wrong right. If you go back and do it right, or you staying wrong and you're still being wrong. Like he just said, the northern king could never get right. First of all, they weren't supposed to have a king, and then in order for them to go be right, guess what they had to do? They had to go back to the southern kingdom. That's the only way they could make it right. Because the worship of God was in the tabernacle. And the only tabernacle they had was in the southern kingdom. So in order to be right, they had to go back to the southern kingdom, and they were not going to do that. So they could never get it right. And again, as the lesson says, sometimes we get in that same place. We're wrong. We started out wrong. We never were right, but we just want to make it right some kind of way. And it cannot happen if you are not right in what you're doing. If you started out wrong, guess what you got to do? You got to go back and get it right. That's the only way you can make it right. But again, most people are not going to do that. They're not going to do it. So they end up still being wrong. And we see that in our world today. Many people are still living wrong right now. They're still living wrong. And they're not going to go back and get it right. Because that would tear down a lot of the wrongness that they have done. And they're not going to try to get it right. But the only way you can be right, you got to start out right. You got to start out right.
Throughout the Bible, you would see people that try to make things right by deceiving people. Deceitful can be strong, especially if, children are taught to obey their parents. And if a parent tells a child to do something wrong, the child knows wrong. They tell the parents, "Mom, I really don't want to do this." But the parents still make the child do it. That's from generation to generation. Because I was reading the Bible on the way here, and I was looking at the twins, Esau and Jacob, and how when Abraham was about to die, he told Esau to go make a venison so he can bless him. His mother heard it, and when she heard it, that's when the deceit started coming in. Because it's strange, because even when she was carrying her twins, she asked the Lord about the robbery that was going on in her womb. The Lord had already told her what was going to happen. But yet, when the time came for Abraham to bless the one with the birthright, first Esau had sold his birthright. But the bottom line is, the mother was the one that made the venison. She told him to go get this animal skin, and she put it on him, and he was deceived. But when the time came, Jacob was the one that lost out on, Esau was the one that lost out on the because Jacob was the one that he blessed. So there was deceit there. But yet, even with the deceit, the wrong one got the blessing. She didn't have to do it that way. That's what happened.
Well, truth be known, it already been prophesied from the very beginning that it would be Jacob. It's just that sometimes people go about wrong things to make something right. But God had already promised to bless Jacob. That's why I say, to be in the will of God, you gotta do things right in the first place. I don't care how. You can't do wrong things and expect to be right. So I believe in lying, cheating, stealing. You'll never be right if you're doing things wrong. It cannot be right. And like I said before, and I think what happens to a lot of people is they don't like to be by themselves. So they'll do wrong things to satisfy other people. And I'll be honest with you, I missed out on a lot of things in life because I refused to do wrong. Promotions, and I missed out on them because I refused to do wrong. But God has blessed me anyway. But when it comes to doing something that's wrong, and y'all know, this world expect you to do wrong. On these jobs, they expect you to. They expect it. Yeah, you write this, put this report just like this. But that ain't right. But yeah, you write it like that anyway. That's how this world is. So if you expect to go through this world and not be approached about doing something wrong, like I said, you're in for a rude awakening. So this world expect, and you look at it really, even many of your family members expect you to do wrong things. Your family members, they expect you to do wrong things. And either you can give into it or you can stand against it. But then you never get invited to the family reunion. They won't invite you over. They'll cut you off. Don't invite them. Well, again, that's your choice. But I made my choice. I'm going to stand for that which is right. Even though I don't get invited, I'm going to still stand for that which is right. Yeah, any comments?
You made a statement.
Bishop, so I think sometimes some people don't realize it. I think that they're wrong.
I agree.
I mean, they're buying so bluntly because of what you say.
Mm-hmm.
They have a justification or an excuse.
Yeah.
But it gets to the point where they don't, they really believe that they are right.
Yeah.
You know they are wrong. Even though you can show them the fact, explain
Right.
it to them, they still gonna say, that ain't what happened. All right.
Right.
You know, that's the bad situation for someone to be in. They're wrong. I mean, they will cry, fight, and everything else to prove that they're right. Yeah, you know they're wrong.
Yeah. It's just unfortunate. Some people, they are so honed in that their wrongness is all right. That they really do believe that they're right. They really do. They're wrong, but they believe they're right. So you have a hard time convincing them, even though you can show it to them, let them see it, let them hear it. They will refuse to believe even what their eyes are seeing. Why? Because they're so convinced that what they want to do is right. They don't care what you say. They're gonna still be right. Max?
Got two platforms. I remember years ago reading where there was children in the band, and everybody, it was 10 of them. 9 of them were marching the right way, but the child, this lady's child, was going the opposite way. And what she said was, "Look at them. All of them are wrong, going the wrong way. My child is the only one that's going the right way." And that's what she believed. That everybody else was wrong, but her child was the only one going the right way. Truth be known, her child was wrong, and everybody else was right. But the way she saw it was different. Another thing saying that sometimes we lose out on promotions and different things because we are truthful. In the long run, in the world sense, we might feel like that we lost out. But you can never lose out with the Lord when you're doing right. Promotion comes from within. If the world promotes you and for doing something that's wrong, but yet you got promotion, that doesn't stand. Where your blessings come from is when you do the right thing with the Lord. I'd rather let the Lord bless me than let a man provoke me and gain worldly goods versus having eternal goods. So that's why the Bible says, set your affection on things above. Because anything that you do in the world hand to hand in, what you call yourself being blessed, that's with the world. But when God, if I got to lose out with the world and gain for the Lord, I'd rather gain with the Lord by being right and doing right than having a promotion that's going to give me more money or a job that's going to give me headship over something. I just rather lose out and just be right with the Lord than have worldly gain with the Lord.
You know something? But you know, this is not a gray area. Either you're right or you're wrong. Either you're right or you're wrong. And so many people have gotten in what they call a gray area. They know it's wrong, but it's all right anyway. And that's not right. It's not right. Either it's right or it's wrong. Okay, the rise of Elijah. Elijah stopped the rain. In this melee of pagan practices stepped in mighty Elijah the Tishbite. Unlike King Ahab, Elijah had no given pedigree. We do not know his father's name, nor are we sure of exact location of his hometown Tishbe. However, none of these details matter because the one crucial fact about Elijah stems from his name means my God is Jehovah. Surrounded by a world saturated with symbols of Baal worship, Elijah stood out because he worshiped the only one worthy of worship. Elijah's introduction to the story feels abrupt and confusing, but perhaps that was the writer's point. Elijah was meant to appear out of nowhere, an emissary sent from the throne of God. His very first words were, as the Lord God of Israel liveth, before whom I stand, there shall not be dew nor rain these years, but according to my word. That sounds strange. What does the threat of an extended drought have to do with overthrowing false worship? In the Canaanite family of God, Baal was the storm god, the one responsible for sending rain so their crops would grow. But Elijah, the worshiper of Jehovah, was challenging Baal's superpower on his home turf, the ancient land of the Canaanites. When the heavens were dry for 3 years, Elijah proved that Baal was powerless and only Jehovah sends rain. Further, Baal had no control over the land, proving Jehovah and his covenant people rightfully possessed the promised land he had promised them. Okay, Elijah called down fire and brought rain. Can we get somebody to read that?
Through a series of miracles beautifully told in the rest of 1 Kings 17, God provided for his prophet during the drought. In their agrarian culture, a 3-year drought all but guaranteed there would be no available food. The story of the widow of Zarephath reinforces the dangers of the drought-induced famine, which for the poor and needy especially meant certain death. In this crisis moment, Elijah once again almost magically appeared to confront the wicked Ahab and conclude this contest between Jehovah and Baal, and once and for all, war of worship. Elijah's proposed test was simple: build an altar of sacrifice, and whichever God answered by fire would be the one Israel should worship. Israel seemed to tilt the odds in Baal's favor. As the god of storms, all Baal had to do was send one tiny lightning bolt to strike the already tender dry wood, and a fire would surely ignite. Elijah let the prophets go first. The story is dramatically, even comically, dragged out. The false prophets of Baal cried to Baal from morning until noon, but Baal did not answer. Amused, Elijah began mocking them and their God. Maybe Baal was not answering because he was distracted, traveling, sleeping, or even in some translations, using the facilities. The false prophets were doubled down and cut themselves until their blood ran like water, but the heavens were still silent. No response, no thunder, no lightning, no flame. It was Elijah's turn. Using 12 stones for the 12 tribes of Israel, he prepared the old altar of the Lord that years of neglect and idol worship had broken down. Then Elijah ordered his servants to pour 12 barrels of water on the sacrifice. Water is pricey in a drought. It must have hurt the hearts of those who watched him soak a sacrifice when they could have used the water for cooking, cleaning, or even drinking. His audience probably mocked Elijah. You can't set a soaked sacrifice on fire. Elijah likely smiled back. You're right, I can, but my God can. In the short time it takes to read it, Elijah prayed a one-sentence prayer, and suddenly God sent a flame of fire from heaven so great it consumed the sacrifice and lapped up the water in the trench around it. Jehovah, the one true living God of Israel, had defeated Baal, and God's covenant people repented. By the end of the chapter, the long withheld rain was pouring down on thirsty land.
Praise the Lord. There are so many storylines, different storylines in this story. We could just take your pick in terms of what you want to talk about, but it is just historic that Elijah, and basically Elijah was by himself. There were 850 false prophets on the other side, and there stood Elijah all by himself. And again, he challenged them to go first, call on Baal, let Baal send fire from heaven, and set a fire to the sacrifice. And of course, it's kind of something how he mocked him. I don't know that I would have done that. But I guess he knew. He was sure. Saying, well, yeah, keep on calling on harder. Maybe he's in the bathroom. Maybe he's going. Keep on calling. I mean, he was really making mockery of me. And I guess because he knew, he was so sure about what his God was able to do that he felt that confidence in God that he would hear his cry. And it's also very interesting. And I kind of wonder about this myself. In a drought, where do you get 12 barrels of water from? I'm not asking for an answer, but it's a drought. It's been a drought for 3 years. But you go and find 12 barrels of water? All right, that's another story. All right. But anyway, any comments?
I tell you, this is a funny story. I know I read another side of that thing. Talking about how Elijah just sit there and took a nap. He did. He did call whoever he did call. Yeah, I think it was something that I read that there were other priests, believers that was in hiding. Because I know they were hiding because Jezebel killed everybody. They were right, I think. So there were some people that were hiding. Shooting churches. But it is a good story. I love it.
Yeah, Obadiah fed them while they were hiding in the cave. Jezebel was out to kill all the prophets. All right. But the key thing being is that Elijah, he was by himself, but he believed in a true God. And of course, as the story goes, that after they had gone to the evening sacrifice, calling on their God, even to the point of cutting their wrists so the blood would flow, but yet their God never answered. But yet, Elijah, I don't know, he even got to say a few words. But when he prayed, God immediately sent forth the fire from heaven. Not only the sacrifice, that the water, that the everything, and to show who he was. And then they went and killed the false prophets, showing that God is God. Well, thanks.
Yeah, I would say it goes to show you when you got the Lord on your side, the world believes there's strength in numbers. But when you got God on your side, it outweighs all numbers there is. Because the thing is, the God that Elijah served was the same God that we serve Abraham. And Elijah had so much faith in the Lord. He knew what the Lord was going to do. He wouldn't have took on that challenge if he didn't think the Lord was going to come through for him. Well, he knew the Lord was. And that's the same thing with us. When we look at what the world look at, you check a man that brings his wife home from work and they have more than two children and stuff. Well, the world will say, it takes two income for us to make it. And that's what they believe. But when you take a man that got faith, and he trusts in the Lord, he paying his tithes, he knows that no matter what he has to face, the Lord always going to take care of his family. And it makes the people in the world wonder, how the way they do so much? Well, here I am struggling. We got husband working, wife working. We don't have one or two children. But yet, see, they more blessed than we are. Because God will always show up. When the world look at it, God always will show up because God can do more than him of that one God and I want faith in him and do more than what the world and a number of people can do. Because God don't look at number. God look at faith.
A person has to know that the Lord is on their side. He has to know that. If you know that, then you don't need to fear anything. But so many times people are so shaky in their lives that they don't know if the Lord is with them or not. But if the Lord is with you, then you don't need to fear anything in life. No man, no woman. Uh, you don't need to fear anything. But the problem with so many people is because of the lives that they live, they're not really sure if God is with them. And if you're not certain if God is with you, then again, that's a shaky foundation from the very beginning. But if you know the Lord is with you, you always do the right thing, always stand for God, take and heed to what God says, and you don't need to fear anything. Elijah could not have done this by himself if the Lord was not with him. Only because the Lord was with him was he able to do the thing that he did. So if you have the Lord on your side, you don't need to fear anything. But you got to make sure that the Lord is on your side. You got to make sure about that. Because if he is, he's more than the whole world against you. If the Lord is on your side. All right, thank God for you. May heaven smile upon you. You want to take power. Thank God for your liberality and pray to God for bless you and you bless the house of the Lord. So again, we thank God for your input, thank God for your presence, we thank God for all that you do. So at this time, with no other comments, and be saved, we will be dismissed from this portion of our service.